Welcome back to the Linux Academy Nginx Deep Dive. In this video, we're going to take a look at proxying to our uWSGI application using the Nginx HTTP uWSGI module. If we compare just the general shape of this, once again, to the fastCGI and proxy modules, you'll notice that, once again, they all kind of meet the same pattern and have a lot of the same interface to them with the actual directives that they supply us with. So you can expect this to work a lot like the fastCGI version of this. That would kind of indicate to us that one of the things we know we're going to use is going to be the uWSGI pass. And indeed, this is going to work kind of the same way. So we can send it an address, and you can give it an optional protocol. It can have a couple of different ones that you can use. We are, once again, though, going to be using a socket because it's kind of just advantageous for us to do so. And another one of the things that we can kind of expect there to be is going to be uWSGI params. So there is, once again, a uWSGI param directive, and it also has a provided uWSGI params file that we're going to take a look at before we actually finish this. But there's not a whole lot that we need to do that's different than what we've seen before. In fact, nothing is different than what we've seen in the fastCGI version, so it's going to be pretty quick for us to get this up and running. We're going to go into the etc nginx confd directory and create a notes.example.com.conf with a server that listens on port 80, server name of notes.example.com. And then the one thing that is going to be a little bit different is we knew when we went through our setup process that we had the make static command that moves any kind of static assets that it needed to into a directory inside of var www.notes.example.com. So we're going to have that as our root, but we can actually set this up to only really care about that as the root if somebody sends us a request that is to /static something else. And that's where all of the static asset requests are going to go in our application. So if we create this here, we can set up the root to be var www.notes.example.com inside of this one location block. And then our next location block is going to be the standard root location block where we actually set up our proxy. So here we're going to use, include uWSGI params, and then uWSGI pass to Unix. And this is going to be at var run uWSGI notes.sock. And this is just something very specific that in our services file, which we can take a look at here in etc systemd, system notes, we can see that we actually set it up to have a very specific directory here. And then in the uWSGI configuration, that is this uWSGI ini, it is saying that that's going to be the socket file that it uses. So if we switch back to our configuration here, we can just rely on that's where we want this to be. And the reason we set it up to be within the uWSGI there is just so we could kind of group those together if we wanted to. If we had multiple Python applications or just WSGI applications running and we wanted to put their sockets in the same directory, we could go ahead and do that. Let's take a look while we're here at the uWSGI params file that's local to us. And you can see that this works in almost exactly the same way as the fastCGI params file. The difference here being that there's not a bunch of PHP specific things, but it's still just a mapping of what Nginx knows how to speak and what the parameter is expected to be inside of the uWSGI protocol. You will notice that we were talking about that remote address thing when we were doing the proxy pass, and we're not doing that right now, and that's because inside of the protocol itself, that already exists. So similar to how we were sending the X real IP header for proxy pass, we're using remote address here. But we're not going to need to make any modifications to these particular parameters. So we'll switch back. And this is actually going to be our final configuration file. So let's go ahead and save and quit. Make sure we didn't make any typos. Reload Nginx. And then we need to jump back over into our separate terminal so that we can modify our local etc host file. And add yet another subdomain here, so notes.example.com. And now we can come back and open a new tab to see if we can get to this site. Ah, the infamous 502 bad gateway error. SE Linux once again has a security issue with what we're trying to do. And we've kind of gotten to the point now where just adding individual lines using SE manage and the file context is kind of becoming a little bit tedious. So let's go ahead and create our own policy file for Nginx. This course is by no means about SE Linux, but one of the most common things you'll find if you search the internet for this is going to be to just create a file that permits the things you know you're trying to do with Nginx. And we can do this by grepping for Nginx within var log audit log. And then we can pass this to audit to allow with a small m and an Nginx, and this will show us what the file would kind of look like. And so right here, we can see that there are quite a few things that it's kind of expecting that we should be able to do. And we apparently need to restore some of the permissions to various things inside of our system. But the one that it's giving us a problem on right now is going to be inside of the uWSGI notes.sock. We didn't have it permitted to do a Unix stream socket. So this is what it's going to need to do. And what we can do here is, in place of the lowercase m that we just used, we can use an uppercase m. This will generate a file for us that is nginx.pp, and there's also another one that is nginx.te, but we're going to use se module-i nginx.pp. And this will load in this new policy file that it's generated based off of all of the errors that it's seen in the audit log for Nginx. And since we've been using this privately and nobody else has been messing with it, we know that everything we attempted to do, we were attempting to do because we thought it was valid. So we saw these errors. We don't really think they should be errors. It's fine for us to put these into a policy file that we can load in. And then we're going to do an se module enable Nginx. If we take a look again at the nginx.pp file, oh, that's the binary version. If we look at the te file, that's going to be the non-binary version of this, but we can still see here that it's expecting us to go through and do a restore con on some things. So before we can actually proceed, we're going to need to do this in both. I'm going to just do it on var ww as a whole and the var run area. So let's do restore con rv on var www example.com and then restore con rv on run uWSGI. Oops, forgot a slash there. With our security issues hopefully figured out, if we go back over and we check out this page one more time, we should now see an actual application here. And if we pull up inspect element and load our network tab again, and we refresh the page, you can see that we have quite a few different things being pulled in here, and most of them are actually coming from our domain, which this is all being served statically, which is Nginx doing what it's supposed to be doing. And we can sign up and create a user, take my user name here, and then finish our sign up process. And now we can go in and create a note. And this is a test note that can do syntax highlighting for us. So if we wanted to create a server block, we could do that inside of our actual notes. So if we wanted to create some snippets, we could go ahead and do that in here. And then you can see them with syntax highlighting. So simple application that we have running, but it's an actual application that's not just doing hello world business back there. Some of it is going to be dynamic user created content, and some of it is going to be more just static content that we have. So now we know how to proxy using quite a few different protocols. So if we take a look one more time at the notes.example.com, this is our uWSGI pass proxying using the uWSGI params also. And this is our simplest version that we kind of came up with, just kind of using the defaults here. But when we talked about what a reverse proxy was, it was more than just one thing, right? It's It's a server that sits in between internet traffic and your backend application servers, but it can be used to do quite a few different things. And thus far, we've used it to route traffic to the right socket or to ports that aren't publicly exposed in the case of our proxy pass. And then we've also used it to serve up static content so that our application servers don't have to manage those separate requests themselves. In the next couple videos, we're going to take a look at how you can also use a reverse proxy server as a cache server, and how Proxy, FastCGI, and the uWSGI modules, all of them give us access to various caching techniques that we can do. So we're going to cover having some caching set up and what kind of headers we'll work with, and then also the concept of micro-caching.